Ben Franklin, he did more than just fly a kite. He invented bifocal glasses, Franklin stove, and of course the lightning rod. But what you might not know is that he also invented the flexible catheter. That we're going to talk about today. Catheters. Yeah, it's sort of a touchy topic when you think about where these catheters go into bodily orifices that were not really designed to accept them. Bladder stones. They're very troublesome. If you have a stone in your bladder, you can block your urethra. That causes urinary retention, and that causes indescribable pain. Well, Ben's brother had such indescribable pain. He had a bladder stone and he had to routinely catheterize himself. But in those days, catheters were straight metal tubes. You can imagine what that was like to shove that in. And Ben thought that he could come up with a better solution. Well, the history of catheters is actually very interesting. The early Egyptians already knew that you could use a tube. They used bamboo or reeds in order to void the bladder when there was some sort of blockage. Must have been a very, very painful thing. The Romans had somewhat of an improved version because when a house was excavated in Pompeii, in a doctor's house, they found a tube like that with the sort of the S shape to conform to the curve in the urethra. That was somewhat better. And then in the Middle Ages, Avicenna, well-known Muslim physician, made metal catheters with a curve, usually made of silver, and that would go in much more easily. But Ben had an idea to make a flexible catheter. Now, obviously, I don't have one of his catheters, but I tell you what the idea was. He thought of a spring, and springs, of course, are flexible, right? So he had a blacksmith make a coil out of silver wire, and he filled in the spaces in that coil with paraffin wax, and he made the first ever flexible urinary catheter, and he sent it off to his brother. And his brother was very, very thankful for that. However, the real breakthrough in urinary catheters, and much to the relief of many men and women too, because they can also develop bladder stones, and that was the development of rubber. Rubber, of course, is the exudate of a tree, grew in South America, but natural rubber latex was very brittle, wasn't very suitable. But when Charles Goodyear accidentally mixed rubber latex with sulfur and heated it, he made what is called vulcanized rubber, very, very flexible. And that made for a much more convenient way of inserting a catheter. Well, since that time, there have been all kinds of developments, and new materials have been developed. Chemistry has played a tremendous role in developing novel catheters. For example, now very often they are made of silicone. It doesn't get encrusted with stones as easily, and of course it is very flexible. One of the biggest discoveries was made by Frederick Foley, a doctor in Minneapolis in the US, and that is the Foley catheter. And this catheter is designed so that it can actually stay in, so that people don't have to catheterize repeatedly. And for example, after prostate surgery, you need to leave a catheter in for a while. The Foley catheter is very interesting because it has a balloon at the end that can be inflated through a concentric tube that is inside of the catheter. You put in some water, inflate that balloon once the catheter has been inserted. That keeps the catheter in place. So this is a very interesting topic, but of course it is something that affects so many people. But they don't think of the role that science has played in the evolution of the catheter. But now you know a bit more about it, and you can appreciate the journey from the straight catheter to the Foley and the convenience that we now have. And some of that, of course, is thanks to Franklin, who had the idea of the flexible catheter. As far as flying that kite, you know what? There's no documented evidence he ever did that.